MRIs, so, which sounds real fun. So actually MRIs are not bad. The one in Susanville is too small. I have a big belly and it's too small. And they had to work and work and work to get me in there. And they said, well, we're so sorry. We're in the process of getting a regular size MRI, not this mini one that we have. And so anyways, so they fortunately, my MRI is going to be, there's a new hospital in Reno, which I didn't even know they had a new hospital in Reno. It's Northern Nevada Medical Center's new hospital west of Reno in the hill there. And I have to find out where it is, but I wasn't sure. So anyways, that's where I'm going to have my MRI. So anyways, enough said about that. Anybody look at the sermon title? What do you think that's all about? Have you ever been in a situation where you've been asked to do something and you're like, you want me to do what? Sometimes we may not understand. Maybe it's, my first job that I had, I worked at the Pacific Press when I was in high school, academy, and in Mountain View. The academy is a block away from the Pacific Press. And so there was a whole group of us that worked after school. And you know, when you're a teenager and you're working after school at the Pacific Press, you're not writing journals, you're not setting type or doing stuff like this or running a printing press. The Pacific Press back then took up 5 square city blocks in Mountain View. Had 200 and something people working there. And so when you got 200 people working in a printing place and all different things going like that, you have lots of stuff going on. One of which is people need to use bathrooms. There was about 25 different bathrooms. They're all stretched out through the thing. And so my job, when I started working there at 16 years old at the Pacific Press, was every day I cleaned all the bathrooms. And it's like, and someone said, you clean the bathrooms? Some of the things that we get asked to do, other ones they collected the trash, and kids worked. When I became a senior, I kept getting, if you do your job well, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest worker that there ever was, but when I was a senior, I got to be in the typesetting room. And back then it was in the transition of setting lead type and the new computer type things coming in. In fact, they didn't print anymore with that lead type. And but they took pictures of everything. They'd print it on a copy, and so one of my jobs was printing all of those things from the lead type, and then they would take a picture of it and make their aluminum printing presses, or aluminum printing plates. And they were in the process of getting rid of all the lead. And so part of my job for a year and a half was, I was a type devil. Anybody know what a type devil was? You have linotypes. Anybody know what linotype is? They have people sitting at a keyboard. They're typing away. They have this great big huge, they're brass letters that are recessed on there, and you have, in one great big huge giant thing, you have all the different, let's say it's Times Roman. So you have Times Roman, you have Times Roman bold, you have Times Roman italic, you have all these different things. And as they're typing, these little letters come down, they're little brass things, and they all line up, what they call the linotype. And then when it gets the right thing, it justifies it out to the right thing, and then hot lead comes in, and it makes a line of type that's hot lead. Well, it doesn't stay hot, it cools down and then you can use it. But after they would do the printing, they had to take that lead type and melt it down and put it into bars so they could do the process all over again. But they had Desire of Ages, they had the whole Conflict of the Ages series with Patriarchs and Prophets, Prophets and Kings, Desire of Ages, Acts of the Apostles, Great Controversy, and they were the wall in the typesetting room. The typesetting room was big, and they had shelves all the way up, and it was at least 12 feet high, and it was all lead type, and they were getting rid of all that. So my job was to take all of that stuff and put it in carts. I had to go through and take the handset type, because there'd always be handset type in there too, with steel handset type. And you had to take all that out. Then I'd take it into the boiler room and you melt it down and you make bars. Anyways, we had jobs sometimes that are not always that pleasant to do. Sometimes God asks us to do things that we don't really want to do. And we can think of Moses. We had our lesson today in the adult lesson about Moses, and God said, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go. And Moses had every excuse in the book of why he shouldn't go. Number one, he didn't want to go. Number two, he said, I wasn't a good speaker. Who am I gonna say sent me? All the different things. And God answered each one of those. I think of somebody else that was asked to do something. This is in the New Testament. Paul he was on his way to Damascus, and he was going to collect Christians. He was going to arrest them and take them back to Jerusalem for trial and probably prison and death. That's what he went there for. And on his way, as he was getting close to Damascus, riding on his horse or whatever, some people say, well, we don't know if he was riding on a horse. No, we actually don't. It doesn't say he was. But most likely he was riding on something, but he could have been walking, I guess. But he had a bright light that hit him, and that bright light hit him so hard that it knocked him off his horse, or knocked him onto the ground anyways. And Jesus said, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Paul answers, who are you, Lord? And he says, I'm Jesus, whom you're persecuting. And you're going to go to Damascus, and you will be shown what you will do. And so when the light left and he had the vision of Jesus was over, he was blind. Couldn't see where he was going. Went into Damascus, and he was there for 3 days. And God told Ananias, I want you to go to Saul, and told him where he was, and he needs healing. And Ananias was like, Lord, you know about this Saul guy? He's persecuting us Christians, and are you sure you want me to go? And say, yes, he is my man, and I've shown him what he is going to be going through. And Ananias went, but he had questions. In a book called Jonah, we have somebody, and evidently Jonah was the one that wrote the book of Jonah. Usually that's how the things are. The person that wrote the book has his name after Amos, Daniel. Other people have their Jeremiah, Isaiah. They wrote the books that they did, and Jonah wrote this book. Is Jonah a real flattering picture of himself? He wrote it about himself. Not very flattering, though, is it? And God told Jonah, Jonah's a small book, only 4 chapters, and they're not real big chapters. You can read the book of Jonah very fast. And God said, I want you to go to Nineveh, that great city, and give them a message that in 40 days they're going to be destroyed. Now, who were the Ninevites? They had been Israel's enemy already. In the time of Ahab, the countries of Israel and Syria and some other ones banded together and fought against Nineveh. And then when the danger was over, they dispersed and that was it. But through the years, Nineveh and the Assyrians had been fighting against Israel. They'd been fighting against God's people. At this time, when Jonah was there, Israel had gotten a resurgence. In fact, in the book of Kings, it's 2 Kings 14:25, Jonah is mentioned as a prophet that said, the borders of Israel are going to extend to where they were in the time of David and Solomon. And they had a period of time there where the borders increased. And they had and it's interesting, there was a time of prosperity there right before the period of anarchy came and Nineveh came and destroyed Israel, carried them off into captivity. But Nineveh was something that was God's enemies. They were God's people's enemies. And God said, I want you to go there. And Jonah's going, what? You want me to go preach to our enemies? He didn't want to go. I've told you this story before. Some of you get Bible texts. Mary and Joy, they get Bible texts from me. Mary Ann gets that, and a few other people. Elsie gets Bible texts from me. Yes. And I send those out. And through the years, there was somebody in Nigeria. He was a chief of his village in Nigeria. And his name was Oki. That's how I would, he had a long name, but one of his names was Oki, and we called him Oki. And he texted me back and he said, you have this Bible text that says, pray for your enemies. He says, our enemies as Christians here in Nigeria is Boko Haram, who is coming and killing people. They're killing us Christians. And you want me to pray for my enemies? That's my enemies. How can I do that? And my answer back, as I texted back and forth, and I says, well, that's not something that we can do on our own. I can't just say, oh, I'm going to pray for my enemies because it says so here in the Bible. We have to work. God has to change us to give us the ability to be able to pray for our enemies. When we experience God's love and forgiveness in my heart, it changes me that I can pray for my enemies. I can even pray for Evan. No, he's not my enemy. But it gives us the ability, and that's not something that we can do on our own. And Oki had said, that's a difficult one. And I said, it happens with prayer on your knees. And as God changes you, then it gives you the ability to be able to do that. These guys were God's enemies. And so in the equivalent of Oki's thing, it would be Boko Haram. It would be ISIS or us going to Iran and preaching to the leader of the Iranian people. And he says, I want you to go to Nineveh. So what did Jonah do? He said, well, God wants me, I'm going to turn around here because if we have our map here and we have the Mediterranean Sea with Judah and Israel and Nineveh's over this ways. And he gets in a boat and he gets a ticket to go over here. He's going to Spain is where he's getting a ticket to. That's 180 degrees the opposite direction, way far. And he gets a ticket and goes. Gets in the boat. And he feels pretty good about that. Now, I don't know if you, have any of you on Facebook right now, they have little clip things. It's, what if Bible characters had cell phones? And they're taking selfies. And it says, and one of them is, hi, it's Jonah, and I just got a ticket to go to Tarshish. I'm getting on the boat. We'll see how that goes. And then the next thing is, then it's, well, I'm here and there's a terrible storm, and I told the people the only way that they're going to get through this is if they throw me in the water. The next one, he's inside the belly of the whale, and he says, well, there's a bunch of stuff in here and it smells really bad. And the last one is, well, the fish just vomited me up on the dry land here, and there's a lot of stuff here that's wrapped around my legs. I don't even want to know what it is. But there's have anybody seen these things? You've seen them? They're interesting. Some of them are kind of question where they got some part of their story, but it's interesting. And they had one of those on there. And Jonah, he felt pretty good about himself, about getting in the boat, because what does he do? Goes to sleep. If you're comfortable about what you're doing, you feel relaxed enough, well, I'm not good.